Good morning, everybody, or almost afternoon. It is June 1st, 2018, just before 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, I thought I'd have a fun video today. So I'm going, let's talk ghosts. This is something that I don't talk about a whole lot, and I definitely have never done on this channel. And I might lose some clout and credibility. But, so this is something that has been part of my life for quite literally as long as I can remember. I wouldn't say that I'm like super in tune or anything. I wouldn't say like I have like abilities or anything like that, but it's definitely been something that has been a constant in my life over the course of time. So the first time I remember like full blown remember seeing a ghost, I was, I think, 3 or 4. If memory serves. I was 4 because we had just moved to our new house in Lapeer in October of '89, which is when I turned 4 years old. I turned 4 in August, but we moved in October. Anyway, that's not the point of the story. Now I remember the day we moved in pretty clear as day, but it's funny because when we think, I say that a lot and I wish I didn't. Anyway, when we think about haunts, and I've, over the course of time, because I've had so much interaction with this, I do a lot of research, I've done talks, I've done, my sisters and I have done, ghost hunts since I was about 13 or 14 years old. So, when we talk about haunting, we almost always think of it in conjunction with old stuff, right? I mean, most people assume that old places are going to be haunted versus new places aren't going to be. Our house was built brand new in our subdivision, and it was haunted straight out the gate. I mean, I could give you stories. Our family has like generations upon generations upon generations of this shit. We had a family ghost and things like that. But, so my sisters and I remember we had a gentleman in our room, and I remember he had like a top hat, and, he was dressed in all black, and he was like the quintessential ghost. Think Kane from Poltergeist. Almost, not quite as creepy, and nowhere near the come to the light Carol Ann bullshit. But he would like literally just walk back and forth between our bathroom and my sister's bedroom, and then just stand in the corner. And I remember, and this is my mom's fault. This is partially my mom's fault. I remember all of us telling her there was somebody in our room. And my mother, in her infinite wisdom, said, well, have you thought of saying hi to him? Maybe he's just lonely. Instantaneous lifetime love affair with a paranormal. It's like, oh, the thing is that with my personality, with the fact that I like to help people, the idea that there are people that haven't crossed on, or there's energy that hasn't crossed on, and maybe there's something that they just need a hug, which is so like quintessential me and has been since even back then. That stuck. So I remember going, and my mom said that all of us were like, all right, but I'm not talking to the guy under the bed. So the second ghost, I remember, I was right around the same time, but we had bunk beds in our room when I was a kid, and I was terrified of the dark. Fun little tidbit, I am 32 years old, 2 months away from turning 33, and I am still very afraid of the dark. There's a lot of psychological trauma there. There's actually a really good reason why I'm afraid of the dark, but I'm not gonna go into it. Back then, it was just simply like, I have struggled with sleeping my whole life. And so what used to happen would be I would leave our bedroom door open, and I would sleep on the floor with my nose and my eyes out our door, because my mom and dad would leave a light on. And I turned over, and underneath my bed, I just saw a face. And he was just smiling at me. And it freaked me the fuck out. So I refused to talk to him, but talking to the guy in the corner who liked to ruffle through our papers and stuff like that, through our drawings, that was fine. And that happened like that for literally all the time. When we moved to our house, so, we were in that house in Lapeer until I was just before I turned, so it was 96. So it was just before I turned 11 years old. We left and we wound up moving into a house in Warren, Michigan, which for those of you who don't know, border of Detroit. I grew up on 9 Mile. If you've ever seen 8 Mile, they shot a good chunk of that movie shortly, like not too far away from where we actually lived. I lived off of 9 Mile in a place called Van Dyke in southern Michigan. When we moved into that house, this was a quintessential type of a haunting type of a situation. Like when you hear about like Paranormal Witness and shit like that. So we moved into this house, and these houses in this area where we were all built during World War II. It was actually a project they had put together for people coming back from the war so that they would have somewhere to live. So it was these little cookie cutter houses, and they were all built right toward the end of World War II. So you're thinking, 40s, maybe the beginning of the 50s in a lot of these cases. And a lot of shit had gone down in these houses. But you're also surrounded by a whole bunch of other shit. But I remember not too long after we moved in, we started realizing we had issues. Because, I remember I woke up one morning at like 2 o'clock. And again, even at 11 and 12 years old, insomnia for me was a constant thing. It's always kind of been a thing in my life. I woke up at 2 o'clock. Sorry, I'm getting messages. It's distracting me. So I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to this loud as fuck wailing. Like, I'm not even kidding you. It was just like, and it was that blood curdling, like something is wrong woman just crying at the top of her lungs. And it was coming from the bottom of our house. Our bedroom was upstairs in the loft. I bolted downstairs, and I'm the only one awake in the whole house until I realized I got downstairs and my dad was up. And my sisters, unbeknownst to me, had both woke up at the same damn time. All 5 of us wound up right in front of the kitchen. I had hit the kitchen first before anybody, and clear as day is this woman standing in the corner, and it gives me chills now even thinking about just, like, I remember she was looking up and her hands were up at her face and she's like, ah! And I was just in shock. I'm like, and my dad finally came up behind me, and so did my mom and so did my sisters, and we all 5 saw her. And she just kind of turned around and then just, and it was like, is that gonna keep happening? It's like, what the fuck was that? We also wound up having, and I do not know why she was attached to me. I really don't. We wound up having a child ghost. Her name was Jennifer. We found that out through researching the house later, by the way, which became one of my favorite things, is researching the houses and things like that and researching the haunts. She was a tiny little girl. She used to wear like this, like what I would call, like, when you see pictures of children from like the 1920s and they're in those really pretty like long white gowns and things like that. That was essentially what she was in. It was lace. Her hair was it was blonde and it was curled really pretty, and she had like bows in her hair. She had bright blue eyes. Kind of sinister looking, actually. I remember thinking that I didn't think she was going to be, like, a super positive thing, but she never was, like, a negative thing. It's just, like, when I was around, it seemed like she would, like, hang around me for some reason. I never could quite figure out why. It was probably because we were right around the same age, but Shannon and Holly were, too. I kind of get that. Like, I think just because of the way that I am, stuff gets attracted to me. It's even with people that are alive, it's just one of those things. But, we had her, but then we had Charlie. We called him Charlie. We named him after Charles Manson, because whenever he would show up, we would get like this smell of smoke, and he would show up in like the weirdest of ways. Like this sounds so weird, and I always feel weird telling these stories, but he was headless, so he would, like, show up with his head in his hand, almost, or I'd open the freezer, and I could swear to God that I saw something there, or, whatever. he was just, and for me, it was never sinister. The only thing we had in our house that wound up being a super negative thing, there was this guy. We named him Justin. I do not know why, because we could never find out what his name actually was. But we figured out that, so a family had lived in our house a long time back, and the husband had murdered the wife and the kid in the house. Now, for reasons unknown, I still do not know why we never could find out what his name actually was. But, he stayed in my parents' bedroom, because we found he hung himself in the closet in what was eventually my parents' bedroom. And so we would hear scratching on the walls, and people would get touched, and you'd get these like disgusting like rot smells. And I got slapped once. Like one of the problems I have is that like when I get hit, or you can just move your fingers down my skin, and it'll leave red trails where your fingernails go. Just like lightly. I'm not even talking just like scratching me. So you can just like, when I was a kid, you could just, I mean, it doesn't happen anymore, and then I would welt, like, instantaneously. So, like, even with this, I just ran my fingernails down my arm, and you can see, maybe, I can see it. There's, like, white trails, and it'll welt up here in a minute. So, I got scratched, and I got hit, and it just, like, showed up right on my face. And he was one of those ones where, like, you could hear it. Like, you could hear him talking, and it was always like super dark, super sinister bullshit. None of us ever got, like, physically seriously injured, but it was always super creepy. So, we wound up moving out of that house in 2006. And we moved into the house in Waterford. And that house, literally, we're walking in with the real estate agent. Alright? This woman did not know what the fuck she was walking into. She said that so later she told us that she had documentation of the haunting, but back then there wasn't a rule yet. I don't believe that you had to disclose that shit to people. I still don't think there's a rule, but I think most people are pretty good about doing it. So we go walking into the house, and it's this big farmhouse. This house was built in, I believe, the late 1800s. It was on an acre of land, and it used to be a part of, like, a huge farm right there in Waterford. We walked in, and you could hear scraping across the walls. We could hear people walking on the floor upstairs. We got to the basement, and I was snapping pictures, and you can see, like, lights in the background. And then we were standing there with the real estate agent, and there was like a bar thing in the basement, like a wet bar, not a wet bar, dry bar, sorry, where you could serve drinks or just entertain. And somebody had a knife sitting there on the wall, and I think it was either a knife or it was, a can opener, you know, the one of those ones you use to pop holes in cans. But she's talking about how great it is with the foundation and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, that damn thing, I'm not even kidding you, picks up off the wall and throws itself across the room. And all you've got is 6 people just, like, watching this thing fly and slam into the wall. And she looks at my father, who by this point, by the way, we're all old hat when it comes to ghosts at this point. My dad and my mom actually way more than us kids were, because they've been experiencing it for their whole lives. She looks at my dad and she goes, "Mr. Warner, I am so sorry. I don't know if you're still going to want this house. There's been multiple deaths here. There's been multiple deaths on the property, and every time I bring someone in to do a tour, we have these problems." She goes, "You know, we've been upstairs and the doors have slammed, and she gives my dad this big thing, thinking that this is going to deter us. And my dad, without missing a beat, looks back at all of us and then goes, 'We'll take it.'" And she's like, "What?" And my dad goes, "We can handle it. We'll take it." And we had a whole bunch of experiences there too. And sure enough, like, we found knives with blood in them stuck in the walls in random places. We found a gun with a silencer on it. We had so many different things. Shannon had a ghost bump into her bed and go, "Ooh, sorry." It's like, "No problem." We had a hidden room in my closet that went into a hidden part of the house we didn't know about. But we had, like, frequently would have footsteps. And I remember when my niece was born, my favorite story, two of my favorite stories involved my niece. So when she was first born, Lila was the first grandchild. We all lived together still. This child got spoiled rotten when she was first born. But, you know, I was babysitting, and I don't remember, I know Holly was in the house, but I know that she wasn't, like, somewhere where I could see her. So I've got Lila, and she's only a couple of weeks old. Maybe she was less than 2 months. I know that. And our cat, Katie, is in front of me, and I'm just, like, cooing and cawing at Lila. She's just, like, we're just hanging out, just aunt and niece, and I think I was reading a book for school or something, because I had just started college, and, she tenses, tensed, and started bawling her eyes out, and then I look over, and my cat, Katie, is up doing the cat thing, where she's got, like, her back's up, and her hackles are up, and she's growling at the door heading toward where mine and my twin sisters, like, the stairs up to our room was. Because we both had the rooms upstairs. My mom and dad had the bedroom downstairs immediately, and then Holly and her ex-husband now were in the basement, because there was, like, a full apartment type situation in the basement. Yeah, I looked up, and I'm looking at Lila, and I'm instantly shielding, right? Like I'm throwing my energy up, and I looked at Lila, I'm like, don't worry, Rara's not gonna let anything hurt you. And I'm just like, I'm holding her close to my chest, and I'm just like, I started singing to her, actually, and then I look up, and there's this white figure just came out of the doorway, and just stood there, and Katie is just slowly crawling up on this thing, just hissing and doing that cat spit thing, and I'm like, dude, it's alright, just get back here, it's fine. And I looked up, and I'm like, you can leave now, you're scaring the piss out of my niece. And my cat. I know I'm very nonchalant, it takes a lot to scare me with this shit anymore, but I actually kind of was scared because Lila got freaked out. But the minute I looked down and I started singing, she quieted, and then she's like, I'm not gonna let anything hurt you, don't worry about it. No problem. Fast forward to right before my nephew Gabriel was born. Holly was pregnant, and so they're only, I think, 16 months apart. They're really not that far apart in age. So Lila, I want to say that she was probably less than a year, or either right over a year, and she was in my mom and dad's bedroom, and we had the baby monitor in the, we were all in the breezeway talking. So I'm on the stairs, my ex-brother-in-law was behind me, my mom and both of my sisters are in front of me, and I start noticing that it was one of those baby monitors where you can see the dial going up and down, like you can see the red going up and down when something's near it, and I started hearing what sounded like rustling, so I figured Lila was just, like, moving around. And we're all sitting there, and all I hear next, and I see the damn dial going up and down with what sounded like breathing, and I'm like, that kid ain't anywhere close to that. We shouldn't. And I remember Holly's looking at me, and I'm looking at Jesse, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then and it gives me chills still. All I hear is, pretty, pretty Lila, whispered at my niece, who then starts to cry. And I'm like, oh, shit. I mean, I do not remember moving off of the stairs, but I know Jesse raced behind me. I raced behind him. Holly was hot on my heels, and so was my mom. And, we all four burst into this room, and nothing there. Nobody, so Jesse ran outside, checked around the house. Of course, nobody was at the window or anything like that. Nothing. Just nothing. And Lila's just looking at us like, what the fuck was that? And shortly thereafter, she started talking about the boogeyman in that room. So there was like a black figure that she would talk about, and she actually used to call it the butt man, which I used to think was really cool. It was really cute. She'd go, she used to put N's on the end of everything for a while. She acted like she was Swedish for a bit. Like, butt monster, big in head, and it was like, what the hell are you talking about? But very clear as day, twice. Pretty, pretty Lila. Pretty, pretty Lila. And then just, whew, I mean, that child, I mean, she just lost it. It's funny because she's the one who's more apt to be totally cool with it now versus my nephew who's just like, fuck this shit. He's like, no. Like, I can't even take Gabriel into Halloween stores. He loses it. Yeah, which is fine. It's a personality difference. I took him to a Halloween store 2 years ago, and he did all right until they have like scare stuff anyway. But even at that point, you know, he's just Lila's more laid back with it, and I think that's because she was experiencing shit back then. But yeah, I love it. I mean, I don't always love it. There's some stuff where I'm like, I got invited to go and do a house blessing for someone who had a child ghost, and those almost always freak me out because child ghosts, 9 times out of 10, I find that it's not actually a child ghost. It winds up being something that's like projecting because it's more comforting. Or it's actually way more creepy in my mind. But there's a couple of things I will not do. In the course of my life, if we go off for a ghost hunt and something tells me to leave, we leave. Like, if you get out. You don't have to tell me that twice. All right, especially when I get, like, my name. Like, if you do EMT, or EP, if you do the recordings and stuff like that, it's just like EAPs. It's just like, or EMPs. What the? Electronic voice phenomena, EVP. Why can I not remember this shit today? I'm sorry, I'm fighting a migraine. But that shit will freak me out. Like, Sarah, like, I've had get out. And then you just get, like, the Sarah from, like, the basement? Nope. I mean, I don't care where it comes from in the house, but especially if it's, like, down a staircase and it's, like, you know, come this way. Fuck you. Nope, I'm done. I am done. I do not need any part of this. But we've had that situation, but there are a couple of places I know that we have on our bucket list. Mansfield Prison in Ohio is one that we're still trying to do. Balleroy in Pennsylvania, which is actually a Civil War museum, and they have a whole bunch of the artifacts and stuff like that. It's supposed to be super haunted, which, duh. The Lizzie Borden house, which... that's a morbid thing for me, but that's in Massachusetts. Winchester Mansion, which actually for the vast majority has been proved to not be haunted at all, but that's family history. I am part Winchester and part Remington. I'd love to go and do that. I've been fascinated with that for as long as I can remember. And then the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, which I think Shannon and I share as a major one. That's where a lot of the Stephen King stuff comes from. And it's very well documented for being super, super haunted. But do you have any experiences? Or any places that you've gone and done them? Leave them in the comments and I will chat with you guys later. Bye.